Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 240 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that has a little bit for everyone. As our regular hosts are taking a well-deserved week off, I'm David, and tonight we have an ACP roundtable. Joining me is Oddball. How are you doing, Oddball?
Pretty good. It's a much smaller roundtable that I'm used to, but
yeah, honestly, it's one of those little two-person fast food tables.
Right?
Except no waffle fries.
Except for the fact that I found out this morning that I was invited to a mandatory meeting for all of the IT department to go over how to input a request for half a day off in our time clock system.
Something that could have been handled by an email with like 2 screenshots?
Well, and apparently, well, this has already been tried, I think, which also kind of leads to if you've got a time clock system and several people in your IT department can't figure out how to use it.
Oh yeah,
you've got a problem.
Yep. So over in the clubhouse, I think it was a Wellowan talking about the one customer who used the point of sale system for the time clock. And the employees just would go in and purchase this item to punch in and then purchase that item again to punch out. And then at the end of the year, their taxes were all screwed up and they were losing their minds. Yep.
Well, I mean, how does that saving money by not buying a proper time management system, how's that working out for you?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, they could have also created a product with a 0 price point.
Or...
or gotten a proper time clock system, yes.
Or you could have just gotten a book and written it down.
That's too trusting.
Heck,
unless they had a person sitting there counting people in and out.
Heck, I think Office Depot actually still sells actual punch clocks.
Yes. Staples, I believe, has them too.
Yeah.
Or if not the clocks, I know that last time I was there, I did see the boxes of cards. So they probably do sell them, just might not have them out on this floor. Oh, and for our listeners today, if you're wondering about why my voice sounds so odd, I hate Bradford pear trees. I hate them with a passion of 1,000 burning suns, which should descend on the Bradford pear trees.
I agree. And, they're also an invasive species that kills the native pear trees. There is no positive thing towards these nasty, horrible things, except, they're pretty for the 10 minutes that they're in full bloom.
Which is right now.
But while they're in full bloom, they smell like rotting meat. And there's actually a reason for that.
Yeah, I haven't noticed a rotting meat smell from our neighbor's property. But,
there's they smell horrible, and there's a reason why they smell horrible. If you might notice, right now it's a little bit early in the year for things to be blooming.
Mm-hmm. And there are no bees or butterflies out yet.
Right.
But there are flies.
Right. They use flies to pollinate. So.
Yep. I just posted a picture in chat, which I took from the top of my driveway. That's our neighbor's property.
Mm-hmm. And it's inducing a headache just to look at.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, they started like Wednesday or Thursday of last week. And I was okay. I was just, a little congested. And then I started waking up with my eyes crusted shut.
Ugh.
Yep. And I had a permit class to teach on Saturday. So Saturday morning before I go off, I take an antihistamine. And of course, antihistamines dry you out. And I then spent the better part of 8 hours talking.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 of which were on the range where I had to talk loudly.
Yeah.
And this is the result. But I sound horrible, but I feel fine, except for the occasional coughing.
Right.
Because it's just my throat is dry and phlegmy. There's no...
Well,
I'm taking a lot of vitamin C and fluids just to make sure it doesn't turn into something.
Right. And good news is you like ginger ale, so you already have that stocked up.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I've been drinking so much tea the last few days.
Tea with honey and lemon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a spoonful of, we've got this nice, it's a local honey, and I forget what particular subtype it is. It's a nice local honey. It's dark. So it has that almost, I guess you could say almost smoky flavor that the dark honeys have.
Yeah.
And we also purchased at a local nursery. We purchased, it's a lemon creamed honey.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it is. I would put that on toast.
I'd put just about any sort of honey on toast.
Actually, I would bake bread just for that honey.
Nice.
Yeah.
And of course, if you were someone that could tolerate the taste of alcohol, I would tell you to add a little bit of whiskey in there or something. But
to the tea or the honey, or you both?
To the tea. Okay. Basically a hot toddy.
Right. Yeah. And folks, there's our drink segment. Tea with honey and a little particular subtype of
for that, I'd go with your whatever your favorite whiskey is, whether it's me personally, I'd use bourbon because that's what I usually have on stock.
Military special bourbon.
I have some of that next to me, but I mean,
we have some here too. I know where we got it,
and I'll be happy to take that back from you if
you'd have to fight my wife for it.
Okay.
She doesn't drink it often, but occasionally she'll put it in a cocktail.
Yeah, and it's honestly, it definitely proves Weir'd's rule of if it says bourbon and is sold in the States, it's at least not bad. Because of the legal requirements of what you legally have to do to call it bourbon.
So what we should do is we should contact the folks who bottle military special bourbon and say they should change the label. Military special bourbon. It doesn't suck.
I mean, as opposed to the military special vodka.
I'm assuming from your comment and tone, it does suck.
Yeah, my dad, who, I mean, as a sign that he was probably an alcoholic, would get the military special, and that's where I got my bourbon, and try to tell me, oh, it's just the same as the expensive stuff that you buy in a normal liquor store. And just, no, Dad, it really isn't.
You say that,
but then again, he also pretty much entirely drank mixed drinks, and usually whiskey and Coke or vodka and Coke, whatever. He loved Cuba Libres, which is
Coke, and
which just throws lime in a whiskey and Coke.
Of course,
or rum and Coke. I'm sorry.
The only reason I know what that is
the song.
No, is from an episode of Big Bang Theory, where the guys were hanging out. Whatever bar that Penny was working at.
Okay.
And trying to just hang out, and Penny was like, if you're going to stay here, you have to order a drink. And of course, they did their usual shenanigans. And Sheldon, well, I don't drink alcohol. But of course, he couldn't just order a soda. No. Right. He wanted a Diet Virgin Cuba Libre.
So a Diet Coke with some lemon in it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Of course, Penny, deciding that she was a scientist too, didn't give him virgin Diet Cuba Libres.
Right.
Just to see what would happen. It's a cute episode.
Yeah, I think that might have been like one of the first season or two where they were still, it still had the atmosphere of we're poking fun at our fellow geeks, and instead of later on when it was very much let's laugh at the nerds.
Yeah, it was one of the episodes where Howard had just started dating Bernadette.
Okay.
But they hadn't actually gotten together more seriously. So I remember part of that episode was about that. Anyway, I don't think our listeners are all that keen on hearing us talk about TV shows.
No, probably not.
They're probably more interested in hearing us talk about firearms.
Yes.
And the first one that I would like to talk about is, well, remember probably a few blooper reels back right now, I mentioned that the guys from Smith & Wesson showed up at the store before we opened to do some photos on our range. But they wouldn't tell us what it was, and they said, well, just wait a week or so, it'll be released.
Mm-hmm.
And then, boy, howdy, was it released. And that is the Smith & Wesson M&P FPC series, the folding pistol carbine.
Mm-hmm.
So think a KelTec Sub 2000 that folds sideways.
And probably has better quality control.
Better quality control and probably actual metal.
And the plastic probably isn't the same plastic that's used in, say, milk jugs.
I was going to go with soda bottles, but yeah, milk jugs is a little weaker. But it's quite interesting in a number of respects. I mean, it's got a standard AR style forend. Of course, the muzzle is threaded, because what muzzle isn't threaded? The grip module, and I did a little more research on this, the grip module is the grip module for the M&P 2.0 compact.
Yeah, it looks like that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was watching Jerry Mikulek's video, and he pops in a 17-rounder, and you can see the gap, and then he pops another one in with a spacer. So it'll flush fit the 15-round magazines.
And if you look on their website, the picture that they have on their website is clearly the full-size mag with a spacer on it.
Right, the 17-round mag with the spacer, which personally, since I carry a 2.0 compact, that is particularly interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
It folds to the side, so any optic mounted on that forend rail does not get in the way of folding this up.
Yeah.
The pistol grip, being of the M&P pistol style, has the replaceable back straps. Not that that's as much of an issue on a carbine, but it's still a nice touch.
It's nice to have it there, and quite frankly, if you've already designed the grip that way, might as well.
And it has one of your favorite features for a pistol caliber carbine:
the fact that the magazine is in the correct spot.
Yes. I mean, I do have my Colt 6450 Repro, which is an AR platform, but that was really the first of the 9mm pistol caliber carbines, and they were working with what they already had.
Oh yeah, and I have my MP5 clone, which
again was designed from the ground up as a submachine gun, and then became. I mean, honestly, so was the 6450 was the commercial variant of the 645, but regardless. If you're going to have something that takes pistol-sized magazines, especially if they are the same as the pistol magazines, why wouldn't you have the manual of arms as close as possible?
Well, and beyond that, it's beyond the manual of arms, which is absolutely there. It's also the whole thing of two things. One, one of the big selling points of the Uzi when they were actually like having to sell it was the fact that, if you have to reload it,
hand finds hand very easily.
Yeah. And two, you're not having to make you're not having to try to make a giant pistol grip to accommodate the magazine. So having it there also means that you can have the chamber further back, which means you can have a longer barrel in a shorter package.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at this thing, it's the charging handle is, as with the KelTec, on the underside of the buffer tube, but it's designed like a wraparound AR-15 charging handle, where it's got these very wide wings out to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And from watching the videos of Jerry shooting it, I don't think it reciprocates. Although it's hard to tell because it would be happening so fast.
Yeah, from what I understand, it doesn't.
Which, considering it's right next to your face, that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And also it has. I do like that it has pockets in the buttstock for 2 spare mags.
Yep, and it comes with the 117 round magazine, like we were talking about, but it also comes with 2 factory 23 round magazines.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And of course, it has a threaded barrel, because why would you not?
Mm-hmm. It has the slide lock on both sides in the same position as on the handgun.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, it has M-lock, except for the top, which is integrated Picatinny rail. Which
Yep, and the stock is adjustable. Not a tremendous amount, but a good couple of inches, it looks like.
Right. The only thing that I kind of go about is assuming that you're not wanting to use optics. I like the KelTec's fold up just as a storage space thing, because having
a little more streamlined.
Yeah, having it be a little bit taller is easier to deal with if you're putting it in like a briefcase or something than a little bit wider.
Although, go ahead.
But that would also require the KelTec's sights also are something that those leave a good amount to be desired.
I have heard that put less politely.
Yes. Well,
one of the other...
this isn't a mag dump, so
no. Yes, we're trying to keep the profanity out of this. One of the other things I think is interesting is that it has a crossbolt safety above and in front of the trigger guard, which, I mean, it's a well integrated safety visually.
Mm-hmm.
Very unobtrusive. It's not likely it's going to get bumped. Of course, the magazine release is the standard M&P magazine release, which is reversible.
Right.
It has the dingus trigger of a 2.0
mm-hmm.
or later 2.0. My only issue, and I honestly, because of where my eyes were going, I prefer something that can mount a red dot on a long gun, and I'm getting there with a handgun because I was demonstrating something to one of my students on the range and realized, oh, I need new glasses. I can't focus on the front sight anymore.
Well, that's why you practice point shooting, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that. But the one thing is that buttstock that takes the 2 magazines side by side is chunky.
Mm-hmm.
I think that personally I would prefer if it was only a single magazine wide.
Yeah, I'd have to actually get one in hand and see just how chunky it is.
Yeah, but it is 2 M&P double stack magazines wide plus.
Yeah.
And that's a bit. But it does have a nice little underside magazine release as well.
Mm-hmm.
My only issue with it is the magazines are oriented with the bullet end down. So if you reach back to release that magazine, you kind of have to do some gymnastics with your wrist to align it with the magazine well.
Well, I'm curious if that is a requirement with that magazine well, or if that's just how they had it in these pictures.
Well, between these pictures and watching Jerry's video, it's how the magazine release locks them in place. There's a paddle.
Yeah, and I can see in one of the pictures on their website that the magazine welds in the buttstock are tapered at the bottom. So
right. Yeah,
that's absolutely the way they're supposed to go in.
Yep, and I think it just from a rapidity of motion, an ease of motion, having them face the other way, so you can just reach back and just rotate it 90 degrees and then right up into the magazine well.
Yeah.
But how long before there's going to be an aftermarket buttstock for this thing?
Well, and it's really a question of how difficult is that to overcome in training.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you can reach back and you have to move it in two planes because you're going to have to reverse the direction of the magazine front to back and horizontal to vertical.
Yeah.
You can't just change it to vertical because then the bullets are pointing towards you, not the target.
Right. Now, there is one more thing that I noticed that it's one of those things that I know people are going to tell me, oh, well, just, like you said, get a red dot and put it on there and get on with your life. But it doesn't look like it comes with iron sights of any sort.
No, not that nothing I saw showed any iron sights.
And it's one of those
bothers
things
me a little bit.
that
yeah, actually I just was scrolling down the specs on the website and it says sights none.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I know a lot of rifle manufacturers just go, well, they're going to put on aftermarket sights anyways, and we can save a couple of bucks by not putting them on there. But
it should be ready to go out of the box.
Yeah, and iron sights, especially like a set of ghost rings.
Yeah, just a set of Magpul backup iron sights.
But
or comparable.
Yeah, but a ghost ring sight on a pistol caliber carbine is kind of it's a perfect setup.
It's wonderfully fast, and honestly, all they would have had to do is where above the pistol grip, where the receiver swells before it joins the forend, so basically above the chamber, is just have a little flip up peep.
No, I'd still there's a couple options they could have gone with. One, they could have like you said, they could have just included here's some here's some sights you can attach to the rails, or already attached to the rails.
Right.
Or there's a couple companies that have integrated flip up sights into the rails of their rifles.
Tavor, for example.
Yeah.
But we were speaking of with the KelTec folding up and fitting nicely into a briefcase or something. That's one of the other aspects of the M&P is it comes with a briefcase, a carry case.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty nicely set up because there's, of course, on the one side, there are the two loops to hold the carbine folded in place. And then there are like 4 or 5 pockets inside for spare magazines, eye and ear protection, an uplula loading tool, whatever else.
Yeah, it's a nice setup. And I quite frankly, the only reservation that I would have for buying it personally is the fact that I don't already own a M&P, so I don't have any of those magazines.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if either Smith or somebody else starts coming out with magazine release adapters for like Beretta or SIG 320 magazines. I can see that being a possibility. I don't know the internal geometry enough, but I can see that being a possibility. But the dimensions of Glock magazines are different enough that I don't see that being possible.
Oh, yeah. As for the adapters for other non-Glock magazines, I doubt it because that the companies that have carbines that do that, the KelTec Sub 2000, the Beretta CX4 to an extent with other Beretta magazines, and the
old Marlin Camp carbines.
And the Ruger PCC, those from the factory had sleeves that you swapped out for them.
Right. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there was aftermarket support for something like that eventually. Yeah, and these days not long.
And I don't blame Smith & Wesson at all for going with their magazines, and the M&P is not exactly a rare firearm.
No. I mean, several law enforcement agencies carry them.
Yeah, I think it's number 2 after the Glock as far as law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 2 or 3 because I know when the military adopted the 320, a bunch of law enforcement agencies jumped on that bandwagon too.
Yeah,
so, but it's in the top 3. We'll just go with that because we don't have statistics at hand. But I was also looking the MSRP on the Smith & Wesson website is $659.
Mm-hmm.
And on the KelTec website for the Sub 2000, the low end MSRP is $578.
Right.
So $80 difference
for as much as we love the stuff that comes out of KelTec.
Oh yeah.
For a very minor amount of money, you get a
much more refined product.
And you can get something that says Smith & Wesson on the side of it.
That's true, too. And it's probably not likely to pop positive on a drug test. Although I do have to say one thing is, if you take a look at a picture of the fore end, could they have fit any more screws on that?
Yeah, there's that.
And there are like 16 or 18 screws holding the fore end together. It's pretty funny.
And I do have to appreciate a company coming out with a PCC, with another PCC that isn't $1,000, $1,200, $1,400.
Yeah, and again, other than rare occasions historically, how often do people pay MSRP?
Right, but I mean, it's just the whole thing of it's always confused me about why so many PCCs have to cost so much.
Part of it, I'm sure, is the name.
I mean,
the Sig MPX is a beautiful pistol caliber carbine.
Once you replace the safety lever, it's a great carbine. I despise the safety lever on it, but there are aftermarket.
What's the issue with the safety lever? I don't remember running across that.
That's because you're left-handed.
Oh, okay.
Trying to think how the safety lever is on both sides.
Standard AR.
But the way the safety lever is on the I'm thinking of the Scorpion. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, now the Scorpion, when that safety is down, it hits anybody's hands.
Yeah.
But the MPX has the standard AR style ambi safety.
Yeah.
And a proper double stack, double feed magazine.
Yeah, and if you have your magazine well out front, I will.
That's the exception to your. It doesn't. It should go in the pistol grip unless
I'll grudgingly accept the it's a double stack and you're trying to fit all the bullets in there in a smaller package. Okay.
Yep. Double stack, double feed gets a little bit of a pass on the magazine placement in the oddball work.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean the Uzi double stack, double feed magazines, but the Uzi looks like a T-square.
Yes.
There is no rake to that pistol grip at all.
Yeah.
Because, well, the magazine has to go straight up.
Yeah.
And pistol magazines tend to go in at a slight angle. But I do like it. I do want one. I'm looking forward to us getting one in at the store so I can take a closer look at it hands-on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what the actual retail price winds up being. I have a feeling it's going to be under $6. I mean, it might be $5.99, but I think it'll be under $6.
And if you get one, and we manage to get together with Erin for a shoot, I would love to see those two rifles go head to head. Side by side. She has a KelTec.
Which she has pimped out very nicely.
Yes, yeah.
And or the other alternative, if Erin doesn't want to make the trip up, is to try to get together with Othias and his Spite KelTec, which he has also tricked out.
Yes,
and he has on the Spite KelTec, he has, I forget the manufacturer, and I don't know if Erin has it as well, but it's an optic mount that you can loosen it and it will rotate off to the side so that the gun can fold. And then when it's open, you flip it back up top. It's not like the the AR magnifier flip optics. It's literally a collar that rotates.
Right, and it rotates the entire
the entire mount.
The entire foreguard.
Yeah. Which at that point is the mount. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'm curious to see how repeatable that is. We know Thias has not mentioned any significant issues.
Oh, and I just went over to KelTec's website, and coincidentally, on their front page, they have buy a new Sub 2000, get $100 check.
Gee.
I wonder why.
Of course, this isn't the first time that Smith & Wesson has, let's say, borrowed an idea from KelTec.
This is true. This is very true.
The M&P 12.
Yeah. Now let's see if they also borrow from KelTec something that I don't think I've ever actually seen in the wild, which is the Sub CQB.
Is that the integrally suppressed, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually also thinking, are they going to do something like the SU-22 or the RDB? Or somebody, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being left-handed, I'm always very leery of bullpups because if they're not designed right, they eject into my mouth.
And you like to have your teeth in your mouth.
Yes. And I have fired an M60 machine gun, which seared the skin on my underside of my jaw because the Marines thought it would be funny to let me do that. Because Marines. I mean,
because Marines, yeah.
It's valid. But yeah, it's an interesting, I'm not going to say innovation. It's an interesting refinement.
Yeah.
I mean, the M&P 5.7, interesting innovation.
Mm-hmm.
But the FPC.
Oh, speaking of refinement and KelTec.
Oh?
They have officially announced the R50, which is their the P50, their 5.7 pistol thing that takes the takes FN P90 mags.
Yep.
And it is the rifle version of it.
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised that they went with R50 instead of C50 because
carbine, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've done that with some of their other offerings is the P whatever and the C whatever.
Right.
But
I mean, the R50 is literally let's stick a 16-inch barrel in it and a wire and attach a wire stock to the bottom of the grip.
It's an interesting gooseneck, but it does put the butt pad and, will be polite, cheek rest at a proper level.
Right. And the interesting thing is, if you look at it, that groove in front of the trigger guard, when you fold it up,
happens to fit there perfectly.
Just a coincidence there. Just a weird coinky-dink.
And again, as with all of KelTec designs, they want to make sure that they keep the fastener companies in business.
Absolutely.
And there are seven screws just on the pistol grip.
Yes. And I don't know if I don't know. Have you ever handled one of the either one, the R50 or the P50?
The P50.
Okay.
We have not seen an R50 in the store yet, but I have handled the P50.
So you will definitely understand what I mean about that gun. Just screamed, no, it needed to be in a rifle configuration.
Yep. I mean, honestly, anything in 5.7 that takes P90 magazines should also be in full auto configuration, but that's a different discussion.
Right. I mean, there's still the thoroughly goofy reloading procedure of that thing. But
yeah, I honestly, when I first saw it, my assumption was that you hit a lever and pulled the magazine out to one side. And then I saw that, okay, no, you pop it open like a break action revolver.
Well, first you have to pull the bolt back.
Yes, you have to lock the bolt open.
You have to lock the bolt open, and then it hinges forward and swap out the magazine, close it back up, and then of course you have to run the charging handle again to actually load the first round into it.
Yeah, because there's no handy bolt release as far as I recall.
There is no, and because you have to have the hammer back in the internals of the gun for it to open up and for it to close.
Yep.
But I mean, I guess there is the theory of you've got 50 rounds to deal with. If you're trying to reload that in a hurry after 50 rounds, you're probably in deep doo-doo anyways.
Yeah. I'm also wondering if this offering from Smith & Wesson is successful, if they'll come out with a 5.7 version that takes the same magazines as their pistol.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
And
I mean, very, very little redesign would be necessary.
And I've seen a lot of people say that they like this design much better than the Ruger 5.7 carbine that they just came out with, where yes, it folds the just behind the pistol grip, so you get some reduction in size when folding, but not anywhere near what the M&P does.
I think it's interesting how many different manufacturers are coming out with another one of those. Ooh, that's interesting. Because I mean, just looking at the Ruger LC carbine, the pick rail comes back all the way to the rear of the receiver, as opposed to the Smith & Wesson, which is just on the fore end. It has the charging handle in the traditional place on the side instead of under what would be a buffer tube on an AR.
Right.
But the price for that is it doesn't fold up into a compact package like the Smith & Wesson.
Right.
And as we've discussed many other times on the show, everything in firearm design is a compromise.
Yeah, and there might be, you would know better than I would off the top of your head. I'm correct in thinking that the 5.7 is a significantly higher pressure round than 9, right?
I don't think it's that high pressure compared to 9. It's higher pressure, but I don't think it's significantly higher pressure. But let me just take a quick check on that.
Okay, because I was wondering there might be some concern with having the hinge, right at the chamber,
right?
Of
what would happen?
Dealing with the pressure.
So let's see. Maximum pressure in PSI for the 5.7 is 50,000 PSI, and for the 9mm is maximum pressure is 35,000. So 15,000 PSI difference.
Okay, which is a pretty hefty difference.
Yeah.
So there might be that as a concern. But yeah, and you're talking about, I think I've mentioned before, I have a theory as to the gun market is finally slowing down.
Yep. I just wanted to toss one more thing in with the pressure issue.
Yeah.
So 5.7 is about 50,000 PSI, 9mm is about 35,000 PSI, 45 ACP is about 20,000 PSI. So the difference between those three is approximately the same amount.
Right. But
and there are plenty of traditional 45 ACP platforms that were redesigned for 9mm without any issues.
Right. That's true.
I just wanted to toss that in there just for comparison purposes.
Yeah.
But you're saying the market is starting to slow down?
The market is starting to slow down, and we've seen this past quarter has been the gun sales, I think, were about where they were in 2019.
I think first quarter 2023 and first quarter 2020, before everything went nuts.
Okay.
January, February sales,
okay.
They're still higher now, but not what happened in second. I mean, I
But
haven't been keeping track of the day-to-day details.
yeah, I saw it a while ago, and I was thinking it was 2019, not 2020, but whatever. But it's nowhere near the insanity that we've seen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, for up close and personal in my case.
Yeah, and I think the gun companies are finally getting are feeling a need to innovate, to keep selling firearms, and two, actually having the time and resources.
They're not running 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week anymore.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things I have on fairly good authority, that one of the stumbling blocks for HiPoint getting the Yeet cannon to market,
the 2.0, the double stack.
Yeah. The one that's not, we'll take a pre-existing gun and just kind of and spray paint a stencil on it. But one of the big stumbling blocks for them was they were too busy desperately trying to manufacture as many guns as they could, and we're still behind on orders.
Yep. Now we're also seeing more of the less major caliber starting to show back up on the shelves as well. I mean, for a while there was nothing after 2020 happened, and then 9 and 5.56 came back, and 12 gauge followed along thereafter, and that was about it. But now we're starting to see 380 is pretty much back to where quantity it was. 40 never really dropped that much, just because demand was lower.
Right.
But we're starting to see, like, we've gotten some 350 Legend in the store, and some we did get a case of 32 ACP. It was hollow points, which if it was Full Metal Jacket at a reasonable price, I would have bought some myself.
Which with 32 ACP, you're getting down to the size of the what are you doing with hollow points?
Yeah, it's at the velocity those guns run in the short barrels of the average 32 pistol. A hollow point is unnecessary.
Well, and I would argue detrimental.
It's going to reduce penetration. Yeah. Because if it's a properly designed hollow point, meaning it'll expand at those velocities, you're already not getting much penetration with a 32.
Right.
I mean, okay, Archduke Ferdinand might disagree.
But he probably got hit by round ball.
Yeah, exactly. And that was sufficient penetration.
And let's be honest, the Fates wanted him to die.
Oh gosh! If for any of our listeners who are not history buffs, just read a lay description of what happened that day.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I mean, it was like, how many chances do we need to give these assassins before they get it right?
Well, up to and including at the end, the assassin thought he had completely failed his mission and was sitting down at a cafe contemplating suicide.
Yeah, he was about to commit suicide when the Archduke's car, which had made a wrong turn, drove right past him. It's just like, wow.
And then backed up or something.
Well, they went down, they made a turn into what turned out to be a dead-end alley.
Right.
If I remember correctly. And then they had to back out, and the corner of that alley in the main road was the cafe.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. The Fates wanting him dead. Yeah, that's accurate. Now, something else the Fates seem to want dead is our next story, which was, Judge Reed O'Connor of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas has issued a preliminary injunction against the BATFE's rule in regards to unfinished gun parts.
Yes.
So this is the case of Vanderstock versus Garland. And there's some quotes, and there's a couple legal terms. Ultra vias is beyond their authority.
I think so. I mean, this is I ain't a lawyer either.
Right, but you've probably heard more of these terms than I have and had them explained to you.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, but Judge O'Connor wrote in Vanderstock v. Garland that the government's likely ultra vires enforcement efforts upsets decades of ATF regulatory precedent against a public that has relied on that historic posture. Have we really, though? I mean, they play Calvin ball at the ATF.
Oh, God, yes.
Where the points don't matter, the rules are very, very important.
Mm-hmm. But good luck finding them.
Well, this week's.
Yeah, right.
But so basically, excuse me, and so he has found for Defense Distributed and the Second Amendment Foundation's argument that the ATF overstepped its authority under the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA. Now, if I understand a different article I read another time, doesn't the APA, not the APA, doesn't exceeding the APA guidelines kind of rely on Chevron deference?
Yeah. And
so this could be another brick out of the Chevron deference wall if that's correct and if it's followed up with.
I want to say, and I haven't followed this particular case as much as I should have.
Yeah.
But I want to say that this is similar to one of the arguments against the arm brace,
right?
Is that they did not properly put out the proposed new rule for the general populace to read and comment on, and yada yada yada. There's certain procedures that a regulatory authority it is to follow when they make a rules change.
Right. Now, another line from the article from the Reload. In Vanderstock, Judge O'Connor found that the ATF didn't have the authority to ban the products Defense Distributed sells, which is why I was thinking that there was a Chevron deference aspect to this. Or could be construed to be.
Yeah, there is.
We're not lawyers, folks.
Well, and the argument was that, hey, your regulatory power is over firearms.
These are not firearms.
Not firearms accessories, not parts that may become firearms, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because then the plumbing aisle of a hardware store is under ATF guidance.
Well, and the ATF has zero regulatory power over, say, scopes.
Right. The only firearm accessory I believe that the ATF has jurisdiction over are things like lightning links and suppressors.
Yes. Well, and that's because of the NFA.
Right. Which also needs to die in a fire, but that's a different discussion.
Dear Lord, yes.
If we can, I mean, my hope is that in a post-NYSERPA versus Bruen world, these lawsuits will continue to chip away at things like the ATF's authority that they have clearly exceeded in other cases, as well as chip away at the NFA.
Well, and that is one of the pie in the sky. It would be wonderful if things that people I'm one of them, but I also recognize it's not going to happen with the current lawsuits over the arm braces. Is it would be nice if the courts just went ahead and said, you know what? There's how many arm braces out in the world?
10 to 40 million. That's common use.
That's common use. And
the ATF has declared that those are all short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns. So guess what, folks?
Yeah. And oh, yeah, by the way, because of the NYSERPA versus Bruen, decision. We are supposed to be looking at
Text, history, and tradition.
Text, history, and tradition. And it ain't there. And
Nope.
even if you wanted to do interest balancing, even if if
NYSERPA versus Bruen didn't say you can't,
even if that was going to fly, which it won't, but even if it was,
what's the interest you're balancing?
The ATF has come forward with all of 2 examples, I believe, of crimes involving arm braces out of the 10 to 40 million that there are running around the country.
Right.
Clearly, there is no interest in public safety over regulating these things. So it fails on all merits.
Yep. But that's going to be probably years of court cases.
But yeah, and I love to see that happen. I don't think it will.
No. I like I said, I do think that it could be chipped away at, but it's going to be a long, hard slog for the pro-gun side.
Yeah.
But one of the things that actually is helping the pro-gun side right now is the absolute insanity of the post-NYSERPA versus Bruen laws that are being forced through. And that's the other reload link that I put in. It's not an article, it's a series of snippets.
Yeah, it makes me angry over all of these things, but yeah.
Oh yeah. But it's things like I still have friends and family in New York, some of them who are gun owners. I'm still in touch with folks at NYSERPA. And what the state legislature and Hochul have done, even in a pre-NYSERPA versus Bruen world, a lot of it would have been questionable. Remember, Governor Hochul is the one who, when asked where would carry be legal, replied, I don't know, maybe some streets.
Yeah.
After the court explicitly, in its decision, Justice Thomas wrote that they couldn't, for example, make the entire island of Manhattan or even all of Times Square a sensitive area.
Right. And by the way, just to make sure our good listeners realize, when they say, yes, we're banning guns from Times Square, that's not that intersection. That's not that block.
It's I believe it was like an 8x10 block area.
Yeah.
So about a square mile, give or take.
Yeah. Which includes people's homes. And a number of jewelry stores. Yeah.
But that's not the only thing. If you remember, one of the segments that I did in a previous episode following the I can't call it by what they call it, the changes that New York State made to the handgun licensing process, one of them was requiring this class, and I did a segment talking to a contact in New York about the prices of the class, which were $400 to $600 for basically 3 days of training.
Right.
Well, California and New York have long had a competition towards being the worst in whatever category it is. And San Jose, of course, we've talked about, had the insurance mandate, which they are not enforcing at all. So at least they're not enforcing it. And that can actually be used, as I understand it, as an argument in a lawsuit against it is, well, they weren't enforcing it. So how is it a valid law? However, a suburb of Los Angeles, Laverne specifically, their application process adds up with all of the different bits and bobs and steps involved. Their total fee for the application for a concealed carry weapon license is just about $1,100 for first-time applicants. Renewals, $650 every 2 years. Now, in New York City, if you are fortunate enough to get a New York City handgun carry license, I believe it's just over $100 a year renewed every 3. And Laverne has gone with $325 a year every other year.
Well, and that's Weird has talked about how in Massachusetts you don't have anybody that just owns one or two guns.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have to deal with
all of that,
the crap that you have to deal with to legally own them in that state, if you only have one or two guns, you're getting rid of them.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
If you're not an enthusiast, you're just going to go, yeah, it's not worth it.
Yep.
So you either have no guns or you have 20.
Right. Now, one of the interesting things with this recent process change, we'll call it, with Laverne is, well, text history and tradition of charging a fee to exercise a right, charging an exorbitant fee to exercise a right, falls on which side of text history and tradition?
Yeah. Well, and doesn't fall, and there isn't. Well, I'd have to look to see if there was dating back to the passing of the Second Amendment or beforehand, but yeah,
well,
it's
post-Civil War. There were several other rights that had, for the time, exorbitant fees attached to them, including voting.
Yeah. Yep.
And the Supreme Court has ruled quite firmly about fees for voting.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see if Laverne's change, and some other jurisdictions have done similar things, but Laverne is just, as far as I know, the most extreme. But I can see a case against the exorbitant fees getting back to the Supreme Court and winding in front of Justice Thomas again.
Well, and quite frankly, it's been an argument that I've had for a very long time of why is it that we have one right where we're being told no, paying for a license,
a driver's license or a non-driver ID
well, I mean, not even that, paying for the voting tax.
Mm-hmm.
We've been told that no, that's horribly unconstitutional. But the Second Amendment, you have to take a class at your expense and pay for this filing fee and get this done at your expense, et cetera, et cetera. That's perfectly fine and kosher and reasonable. That's something that I've been that's kind of irritated me for a good while.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things. I've had discussions that usually at this point go badly is with gun prohibitionists is they talk about, well, charging a fee for someone to get a handgun license, blah, 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 is good and justified for these reasons. Like, so then you'd be okay with similar structure being applied to voting. And no, they would not. And they are quite vocal about no, they would not. And how dare I propose something so racist, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, think about what you're saying.
Yeah.
Think about where the differences lie and where the similarities lie. Because, I mean, honestly, if it is not legal by the courts to charge a fee for exercise of a constitutional right, such as voting, then it shouldn't be legal to exercise a constitutional right, such as owning a firearm.
Absolutely.
Now, I can understand, even if I disagree with it, I can understand municipalities that have a carry license process and saying, okay, we're not charging you for the right to carry because we have permitless carry.
Right.
But if you want to go through the permitting process, we have to offset the expenses of doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Again, don't like it. It should be constitutional carry in every state.
Right. Yeah.
But that we're getting there.
So one thing that has slipped in that is that is good, but also puts us in a weird situation, is, as I'm sure our listeners remember, the Fifth Circuit of Appeals struck down the bump stock ban, which has been upheld in 3 other circuits. I know the 6th, the one that you and I live under, upheld it a couple years ago. But I don't remember who the other 2 are. But the 5th Circuit, their en banc decision said, with a fairly wide margin, no, bump stocks should be legal. The banning of them is an overstep of the ATF's power, et cetera, et cetera. The deadline for the Fed, the DOJ, to file an appeal to the Supreme Court about it has recently come and passed.
Right.
And
you said it's not because the Department of Justice dropped the ball, it's because they chose not to appeal.
Right. I have no reason to believe that they had an oopsies. I believe that they went, yeah, we're just going to go home and take the loss. Now, of course, the interesting thing with that is now we have, in theory, if you live under the 5th Circuit, which I believe is Texas, Louisiana, and
Arkansas?
Could be.
Yeah, I got to look it up.
Yeah. I know Texas and Louisiana are 2 of them. I'm trying to remember what the 3rd state is.
It's Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas.
Mississippi. Okay.
Like, I knew it was somebody next to Louisiana.
According to, if you live in one of those states, according to the highest court in your land, minus the Supreme Court, bump stocks are completely kosher tone. In other parts of the country, that's not the case. And I was kind of hoping that the DOJ would, in fact, try to appeal it and that SCOTUS would take it up, because now we've got...
Decisive, yeah.
Right. Now,
Post-Bruen, I don't think that would be a difficult decision for them.
Right. Now, I will say, at least with the 6th Circuit, I did see that there's a gentleman in Kentucky that is trying to get the ball rolling on another case here, and with the argument of the legal landscape has in fact changed dramatically since 2017, 2018, with NYSERPA versus Bruen, and also probably citing, the 5th Circuit just decided this. Are you guys sure you're good with your decision?
Now, I'm actually looking at a map of the U.S. Court of Appeals districts, and I said I thought that Arkansas was part of the 5th. Arkansas is part of the 8th, and it's like this leg coming down. And it really looks like Arkansas should either be the 5th, 6th, or 10th, more than the 8th, and the 5th or the 6th more than the 10th, for that matter.
Yeah,
it looks like it would fit better.
Whenever they divide things up, it's always a little screwy.
Yeah. I mean, just like with the 6th is where this stripe from Michigan through Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee.
Yeah. So but anyway, and with the 6th, they did put the appellate seat in a decent position. They put it in Cincinnati, which is basically
kind of central.
In the center of that stripe.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully that gets some motion, and I'll be interested to see how things go with that.
But with a circuit split between the 5th and the 6th, specifically, and what we're talking about with the bump stock, because you said the 6th had already decided that the federal law was okay, the federal regulation was okay.
Correct.
And the 5th has now said, no, it's not. That's a clear circuit split.
Right.
Isn't that one of the ways that things wind up getting fast-tracked to SCOTUS?
Yes, that tends to be one of the ways that SCOTUS goes, okay, yeah, we are going to actually have to hear this issue.
We may not want to, but we kind of have to.
But it also requires the party on the losing end to press their luck and actually file an appeal with SCOTUS.
Right. So that would have to be someone from the 6th in our case, on our side.
Well, in this case, it would have been if the DOJ decided to appeal the 5th's ruling,
Mm-hmm.
they would have been petitioning SCOTUS to hear the case.
Right.
So basically, at this point, we need to have another case basically start from the beginning
In a different circuit.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a different circuit than the 5th, at least, because in the 5th, there is no grievance to have anymore.
Right. So if, for example, you said it's been a few years since the 6th said it's kosher. So
Right.
if somebody now brought a case up, and you said you thought someone in Kentucky was doing so,
Mm-hmm.
then the 6th would have to either decide, do we go with the 5th or do we go against the 5th, in which case there's a clearer circuit split with current.
Well, either way, if it gets up to the en banc of the 6th, either with either outcome, the quote losing party in the decision can choose to appeal to SCOTUS.
Yeah. Okay.
And that has to happen
Right.
for SCOTUS to decide to take up a case.
Well, I just want as many of these types of things to get brought up to the SCOTUS level while we have the current makeup of the court, because
yes,
I honestly, now is our time.
Yeah,
and I don't see the makeup of the court improving in the favor of the Second Amendment for the rest of my life. I'd like to be wrong. I would very much like to be wrong, but
right, and that's part of my frustration with how little SCOTUS has been willing to play in the Second Amendment pond after Heller and McDonald.
Right, but with Heller, McDonald, and NYSERPA,
right. I mean, it should be, but we're seeing a lot of federal judges make excuses and try to ignore it, and we're seeing a lot of the appellate courts doing the same, and that's
because the Supreme Court can make rulings, but they have no teeth.
Right, and
that's the biggest problem that we're seeing now.
And if SCOTUS refuses to take up the cases, there's not a whole lot that can be done.
Right, and as friend of the show with common name has said repeatedly, with these New York and New Jersey and Laverne, California, passing these laws, what's the cost of failure to them?
Right. Now, speaking of New Jersey,
yes,
there are a few lawsuits in New Jersey over their new law that has passed but hasn't gone into effect yet. Over
which one is this?
This is, and the couple cases I'm specifically going to reference are Siegel versus Platkin and Coons versus Platkin.
Okay. I'm assuming Platkin is like the New Jersey State Police Commandant or something.
Attorney General.
Okay.
But yeah,
same idea. The top law person in a particular category.
Right. Yeah. And if you're unaware, New Jersey is one of the states that has decided to go along with New York and do the whole, we're going to just declare everything a sensitive area. And I think also went with in private places, you can carry if the owner of the property posts that they allow carry and this, that, and the other. But anyways, in Siegel versus Platkin and Coons versus Platkin, which those cases may have been joined together, the Judge Bum, had declared an emergency restraining order from the law going into effect, which basically means, okay, the plaintiffs have decent cause for grievance, and if I allow thing to happen, that is a can of worms that once it gets out cannot be put back in, or the plaintiff is going to be irreparably harmed. So,
and the lines for that have not always been clear.
Right.
What is irreparable harm?
Right, and it's always subjective as far as where the judge draws that line.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so they did. So she declared that.
I'm sorry, which she?
Sorry, Judge Bum.
Okay.
The judge declared it.
I'm sorry, I need proper nouns.
Yeah, that's fine. The judge declared it on February 24th, and basically said, "Yeah, we're this emergency restraining order will take place until we have a hearing on this date. At which point, I'll decide whether I want to put a preliminary injunction in place, which will keep the law from taking effect basically until we're done with the case, or if I'm going to let the law take effect, or what have you." Interestingly, the state of New Jersey recently sent Judge Bum a letter about this, asking her to speed up her decision as to whether or not it was going to be a preliminary injunction.
That could be coming from a belief that their position is strong, or can we just pull the Band-Aid off?
Well, it's so from the letter, which is only like a page long after you get rid of the header and the signature lines and all that.
Yeah, I haven't read it. You requested I not read it because you wanted to get my reactions fresh, but I did pull it up, and it's like 4 paragraphs.
Yeah, but let's hear. Defendants intend to file a notice of appeal on or before March 8th from the TRO orders dated January 9th and January 30th. Okay, so I got my dates a little mixed up. Although this court is likely aware that TROs are not ordinarily appealable, a TRO functionally becomes a PI and therefore becomes appealable after a sufficient passage of time. Basically, this letter is saying, well, since you're taking your sweet time to make your ruling on this, we may just go ahead and appeal it anyways. Which,
that's spicy.
And
I'm not sure how, again, not a lawyer, but how can you appeal a ruling that hasn't been made?
Well, the idea is they're stating that a TRO, if it lasts a sufficient amount of time, it can be treated as a preliminary injunction, at which point you can appeal the TRO. But also, the language used in this letter is not the kind of language that I would use if I was going to have to later go in front of this person and try to convince them of that you have the correct argument.
Oh dear. So is this the kind of stuff that would annoy the judge?
Yes.
So the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey, who is hoping to get this law maintained, has sent a letter that is likely to annoy the judge who is ruling on the law itself?
Yes, because part of this is them saying, look, you wanted to combine these cases to get this stuff over with. So let's get it over with.
That is a bold strategy, Cotton.
right?
We're gonna have to see how it plays out for them.
Yeah. As you said with the New York stuff, this law is so blatantly spitting in the face of NYSERPA versus Bruen that if it doesn't go down in flames, there's something
very
horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to someone who is in fact a lawyer and is in fact someone who has written briefs for the Supreme Court, there is a link in the show notes for Four Boxes Diner, a YouTube video of the gentleman that does Four Boxes Diner discussing it. As a lawyer, he can get a little bit long-winded. But
the deuce you say,
right? But he of the YouTube lawyers on YouTube that discuss the Second Amendment, I find him the most one of the more authoritative. There are of course a couple others, Runkle of the Bailey and who is it that does Fudbusters?
Matt LaRosiere.
Yeah. Since they specialize specifically in gun laws.
Yes.
Though Runkle is one of them sneaky Canadians.
Well, depending on where he is, he's either a northern maniac or a northern Michigander or a northern Oregonian or a Washingtonian, rather.
Possibly a southern Michigander. And of course, speaking of which, I see you just put in the
you mentioned Runkle, and it was like, yeah.
And by the way, I saw that Runkle won a Gundy's Award, and
yes, and good for him.
Congratulations to him. He definitely deserves
put in the work.
Every bit of acclaim that he receives.
Yes.
But he recently put out a video on the most recent developments with KE Arms and their lawsuit. Yeah, the lawfare that GWACS is committing on them. And the short of it is, from what I understand, and it's a little bit confusing, but from what I understand, the judge has dismissed practically all the complaints that GWACS had. The only thing that is left, I believe, is that GWACS claims that they had an
NDA.
An NDA
with KE Arms regarding certain financial information.
Certain financial information, and I want to say some of the material science involved.
I thought all of that got thrown out because it was all stuff that had been released earlier or was determined by examining the products that were sold.
I think there were a couple features on the KE Arms lower that GWACS is claiming, that was going to be in a future product of ours that we told them about.
Well, I watched Bloke's video and part of Runkle's video on this, and Bloke spent quite a bit of time quoting the judge.
Oh, yeah,
which is funny. But the two features that GWACS said was their Mark III and Mark IV designs. The Mark IV design had an adjustable stock, which KE Arms has never done.
Right.
So ignore the Mark IV. Right. The Mark III, the big deal with the Mark III was the QD socket just behind the pistol grip.
Right.
Except that several years prior to GWACS starting the design on the Mark III, a member of AR15.com put up his process of adding a quick detach socket in that exact same position on his own.
Right, and that's
provable predating the GWACS.
Oh, claim. Yeah, but one of the things is, and I wasn't real clear with Bloke's video, because Bloke did seem to have a lot of commentary of, well, but this exists and that exists, and it's the question of is this something that KE Arms pointed out to the judge for helping the judge make the determination, and I wasn't real clear on that.
Yeah, that you would probably have to read more of the court documentation to get
and it's one of those things.
But KE did present the judge with a huge amount of information of stuff that GWACS had released or that private individuals had gotten.
Right, and it's also possible that that has already been put in evidence, and just the judge missed it, or they didn't feel that they needed to focus on it, or whatever.
Right.
There was also very much in the language that the judge used. The judge very much was encouraging GWACS to figure out how to settle this before it actually got to court. Which, honestly,
that's a good judge.
Judges are happier if things get settled before they hit the courtroom. Yeah. Anyways, but the language that the judge was using was very much this is not going to go well for you.
Yeah. You might want to lube up before you come back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a couple of the times that in Bloke's video he said, this may be the judge throwing a bone to one side or the other.
Right. And
he was very clear with what he was reading and what was his opinion, which I appreciated very much.
Yes. And that is something that judges will do just to make sure that they give the impression of neutrality.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if they're not impartial, they have to appear impartial.
Right.
Now, I'm really hoping that we are about to see the end of this lawsuit.
Yeah.
I'm also hoping with less confidence that KE Arms will be able to recover some of their legal fees from GWACS.
Yeah, which unfortunately since GWACS basically did not exist as a company before the lawsuit.
Yeah, as soon as the lawsuit is over and it's not in their favor, they disappear again.
Right.
And how do you claim damages from a non-existent entity or a bankrupt entity?
Right.
But the financial backer of GWACS had made public statements that he had no intention of revitalizing the company or producing any more products. He was solely doing this to drive KE Arms out of business.
Right.
And that may be an actionable statement. I don't know enough about that or most other parts of law for that matter. But someone coming out and saying, yeah, my only concern here is hurting this other person with this legal process. That's the textbook definition of lawfare.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I believe since his name isn't on the lawsuit.
Oh, just his money is behind it.
Right. It's very similar.
They wouldn't be able to take action against him in person.
Right.
It's very action against GWACS, which would suddenly cease to exist.
Right. It's very similar to the Brady campaign supporting the couple that sued Lucky Gunner.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Lucky Gunner couldn't go after the Brady campaign because
their name wasn't on any of the paperwork.
They weren't actually the ones that sued them.
Right. Even though they provided the lawyers.
Right.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, the NRA was a considerable force behind the NYSERPA versus Bruen lawsuit, but they kept their name out of it. And as I mentioned, I know Tom King, president of NYSERPA, an NRA board member, and he said that they couldn't have done it without the NRA's help.
Right.
So it does work from both sides.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's advantages to that mechanism existing, but
yeah,
it can be frustrating.
One of the things that Tom and actually a couple of other folks mentioned over the years was that with some of these lawsuits, if the longer they can keep the NRA name from being affiliated with it, the more low-key behind the scenes the lawsuit can run.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as the NRA name is affiliated with a lawsuit, suddenly everyone comes out of the woodwork wanting a piece of them.
Yeah.
And I can see that. I mean, it doesn't change my opinion to the current rendition of the NRA. Wayne's clothing allowance and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's good to know that there are still some positives. And speaking of potential positives, the next potential positive is out of North Carolina. Now, Sean Sorrentino has spoken on this in the past, and I would like to hear from him again regarding the North Carolina's purchase permit process. Sorry, pistol purchase permit process. Had to get a fourth P in there. Basically, this is one of the last Jim Crow era pistol purchasing laws left in the country. And it's in North Carolina. Basically, requires someone to obtain permission from the local sheriff, and they get effectively a coupon, or coupon, if you prefer, to buy that pistol. So the sheriff's office has basically complete control over who does or who does not buy a handgun. And, it's not the state sheriff, it's county sheriff, the local sheriff. So you live on one side of an invisible line in North Carolina, and you're okay. You live on the other side of that invisible line, and you are not allowed to buy a handgun.
Right.
And the state legislature has, I think, 2 or 3 times tried to get this law repealed. Well, currently, the way it stands is that the North Carolina House passed their version of the bill on a 68-47 party line vote. And the previous week or the following week, another adjacent to that, the Senate 29-19, also party lines, similar bill. However, because they're 2 different bills, they're different legislation, they have to do a reconciliation bill before it can clear the legislature. But there's strong confidence that the Republican majorities in both chambers will make that happen. And then it goes to Governor Roy Cooper for signature, except 2 years ago, in August of 2021, he vetoed similar legislation.
Right.
But it kind of reminds me of the permitless carry or constitutional carry laws. How many times did a number of these states have to try something like that before it finally got passed and signed or had a veto-proof majority, depending on the state?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're seeing right now with what's going on in Florida with their permitless carry legislation. How many years has Florida been passing or proposing permitless carry legislation?
Mm-hmm. And of course, again, with Florida, that bill has all sorts of other things tacked on to the point that there's a lot of pro-gun folks that are going, do we really want this passed?
Yeah, poison bills.
So,
the North Carolina bill, in addition to removing the permit, and it says, for purposes of determining an applicant's good moral character to receive a permit, the sheriff shall only consider an applicant's conduct and criminal history for the 5-year period immediately preceding the date of application. That is from the Senate version of the law. It also includes, and the short title, guarantees Second Amendment freedom and protection, which is nice. It also would change North Carolina law to allow people to carry in places of worship during services, which currently is not legal.
Which is one of those things that I never understood.
Nods sadly in Jewish.
Yeah, and it's one of those things of if your church gets together and decides that they don't want firearms in their place of worship,
That's their right.
Okay.
They are dangerously mistaken, but that is their right.
Yeah. But the law stating that no, you must not carry guns in churches and other places of worship, I never understood.
I don't know if you realized, but your voice got a very slightly German accent when you said that.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Okay, I just thought it was a nice touch. But the last section of the Senate bill would launch a 2-year firearm storage awareness initiative, which would include a website and toolkit on firearm storage and the distribution of gun locks.
Which I always love the anti-gunners going, well, we need to distribute gun locks.
We do. The National Firearm Safety... No, wait.
The National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Yes, thank you. They've been doing that since 1991.
Yeah. We both have a pile of cheap gun locks that...
Yep. And it's also federal law that any new firearm, or I believe actually any firearm sold by a retailer, I'm not sure if it's just new or new and used. I have to double check that. But I definitely know any new firearm must come with a locking device.
I do not think used.
Yeah, I think there might be some state stuff on.
Yeah.
But I know with new firearms, they have to come with a locking device.
And if it is, I definitely know a couple FFLs that did not pay attention to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just new, but it's
yeah.
You can go to any police station in the country and say, "Hey, I'd like some gun locks," and they're like, "How many? Please take them."
Or you can go into just about any gun shop and just I want a gun lock. It's like, okay, do you want a good one or do you want a free one?
Yes. And I remember when I was working the gun shows in Albany with NYSERPA, there was always a state police table.
Mm-hmm.
And they had several copy paper boxes the boxes that size full of those NSSF gun locks, the Project Child Safe gun locks.
Yeah.
And if anybody slowed down at the table and even glanced at the pile of locks,
here, have one.
They'd be hard pressed to leave without a handful because they had several of these boxes and they didn't want to carry them out at the end of the day at the show.
Right.
So,
well, shall we end on a high point?
Nice. Absolutely. End on a high point.
So, as our listeners probably know, I recently purchased a HiPoint 10mm pistol.
Because 10mm is best millimeter.
Because 10mm is best millimeter. And my FFL thinks less of me now.
After some of the stuff that you had transferred through, how could he think less of you?
Well, there's that.
I mean, no offense, but...
and it's actually been a couple weekends now. Both David and I were at a local science fiction convention called Confinement. That included. We started Friday morning off at a private gun range.
Thank you again to the owner of that range for letting us come and disrupt his morning.
Absolutely. And of course, one of the things I brought was that pistol. And Mike Williamson was there, and being the organizer of the entire shebang.
Shebang, literally.
So I informed
and he brought some lovely toys.
He did. Unfortunately, a number of them decided that they weren't going to behave. But
well, when you're 100 years old, you have an excuse to misbehave like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, and fortunately, it was all stuff that was non-destructive to the gun. Nobody got hurt, and it was all. Oh, it's it goes click and it don't go bang, or something to that effect.
Or it goes bang once, but not again.
Right. But Mike knows my purchasing proclivities. So I informed him that I made a new purchase that for him to question my sanity. Which point he responded, "Oh dear Lord, what did you buy?" And I showed him the 10mm HiPoint, and he actually went, "Oh, I want to shoot that."
I don't think he was quite that enthusiastic at first. Because he's met you.
Well, he was a lot happier to see that versus whatever was going through his head over what I may have bought.
He does have at least one low point.
Yes.
For our listeners who are not familiar with that, the HiPoint is the manufactured firearm. The low point is the 3D printed grip frame with basically a HiPoint parts package installed.
Right.
So it's even cheaper than a HiPoint.
And I had several folks fire rounds through the HiPoint that day. And besides needing a little bit of oil near the end of the session,
which for a straight blowback, it's nothing to be surprised.
It ran flawlessly, and everybody had good things to say about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, and a good amount of it was the holy crap, you got this for $200 and it shoots 10mm, doesn't explode, and it doesn't hurt my hand.
Yeah. And how much have you spent on 10mm ammunition as of this date?
I have spent, I think, about $170 on ammunition of 200 rounds of ammunition for it.
So one or two more boxes and you've spent more on ammunition than the gun.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, I got to shoot it as well. The sights are not great, but they're not terrible.
No. And
more sights, and they're not point of aim, point of impact are not quite lined up. But I was still able, I think almost everybody was able to make hits on steel.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that when I first pulled it out of the box, it was really not sighted in at all. So I tried to sight it in as best I could the morning of. So obviously there needs to be some refinement, but yeah, it is actually so far it's a decent pistol, and it's $200 for a 10mm pistol. It's there, and it works. And once and as David said, the sights weren't quite lined up where they should have been, but once you got an idea of where it was pointing, it was pointing in the same spot every time. So can't really ask for a whole lot more.
No. And the interesting thing, as I think we've mentioned in some of the blooper reel content, was the recoil impulse.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, that's a lot of mass moving back and forth with that slide.
It does have the added benefit of you can do bicep curls with it.
And racking the slide repeatedly is better than a shake weight.
That's right. So actually, racking the slide on that thing is not that bad.
No, it's just it's a bit of a distance.
It just it just goes for a mile.
Yeah.
So yeah, I knew folks knew that I had that and were probably interested in how it turned out, and it works rather well, and I would recommend it. Now, I mean, I've also shot a 10mm Nighthawk, and
that thing cost more than several of my cars.
Yeah, would I take the Nighthawk over the HiPoint? Absolutely.
Take a lot longer to amortize that cost in ammunition. But
the Nighthawk, you're talking about $4,000 to $4,500 versus $200. So, okay. Well, do you have anything else before we wrap it up?
I think we've covered all the topics. As usual, of course, a thanks to each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like our hilarious blooper reels and the ACP film tracks and ACP Magnum. Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends both online and off. You can get more from Weird at his blog, which is weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. And you can also hear him weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network. You can get more from Erin at linktree/Erin Paulette. That's linkter.e/Erin Paulette, all one word. Oddball, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me right here, and I am a frequent guest on Handgun Radio. And of course, if you haven't already, a couple weeks ago, David and I sort of hijacked Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and we'd like to...
We were invited guests. They reconsidered that, but it's their fault. I swear I am going to put up a new post at gunscarstech.com, and of course you can always find me on the Assorted Calibers podcast Facebook group. Yes, and just because Weird gives you crap, you had a segment ready for tonight when they decided that they needed a week off.
That's right.
So
the lesson here is that clearly I should never do segments ever again, and that way they will... Because I think the last time I had a segment ready, nobody else had a segment ready.
Yeah, the last time, I did have a segment written, but I didn't have a chance to record and edit.
So clearly, I shouldn't record.
You're a jinx. Yes, your segments are a jinx. But we enjoy them so much. Especially your segment on throwing knives. I want you to do a comparable one on throwing stars.
And of course, in addition to here, you can also find Weird as a guest on Handgun Radio. He's also a contributor on Blue Collar Prepping Blog, that's you, David.
Yes,
you're a contributor on Blue Collar Prepping Blog.
Yes, you're reading my ending portion.
Yeah, well, too late. And you can find the Blue Collar Prepping Blog at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. They're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check it out. And if you have anything, please feel free to suggest it. And if you want to finish us up.
Sure. I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under both my author name, Brenna Bach, that's BRENABOCK. I also have stories and anthologies under my actual name. Look for David Bach on Amazon. Not the guy who writes the computer books. I wish I had his money. And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
And of course, Erin and Weer'd were having terrible, horrible, not so good weeks. And David and I were having decent weeks.
Except for the pollen, yes.
Yeah. So our experiences with life at current are assorted, and so is our podcast. Nice. Good night, folks.
Good night, everyone.